So Nintendo finally revealed the Switch 2 earlier this week, and everyone, at least initially, seemed to be happy. Talking to your friends online, backwards compatibility with the original Switch, support for GameCube games was announced, stronger hardware, the Switch receiving popular games like Elden Ring and Cyberpunk 2077, history repeating itself, and more were revealed to the public. Capping off this mostly excellent show was the Nintendo revealing the price of their system and new games, which probably blindsided most people. Before getting into this, people who've seen my videos or watched my live streams know that I'm not the biggest fan of Nintendo. I plan on dedicating a video to them in the future, but I'm putting my bias to the side because these prices are actually really interesting. Almost a year ago now, I made a video called Are $70 Games Enough?, exploring why video game prices are climbing with economic data. I highly recommend watching this video because a lot of what I said there is still relevant to this discussion. Instead of repeating myself, I'd like to offer a more nuanced perspective on Nintendo's new $70 to $90 price range and what it means going forward. As we all know, video game budgets have exploded over the past 2 generations for a plethora of reasons, whether it's the cost of labor, poor executive leadership, inefficiencies in production, new engine costs, licenses, or some other logistical reason. Games are much more expensive to make than they were in 2005 when they cost us $60. To offset these additional costs, season passes, DLCs, microtransactions, subscription models, loot boxes, and battle passes were introduced. As profitable territory was becoming harder and harder to reach, publishers created other avenues to generate revenue, and while these avenues were initially met with lots of criticism, eventually everyone bought into it, and now DLC are announced before games are even released. Fast forward to fall 2020 and games increased to $70. Industry executives defended this decision, saying it was necessary to offset inflation and rising development costs. And as someone who spent time in the commercial banking and mergers and acquisition space, I've become proficient in corporate bullshit. Executives are kind of like politicians. They say a lot of stupid shit like, and I quote, "One of the things we saw is that gamers are used to a little bit like DVD, having and owning their games. That's the consumer shift that needs to happen. They get comfortable not owning their CD collection or DVD collection, so it's about feeling comfortable with not owning your game. By that logic, if buying isn't owning, then piracy isn't stealing. Right, Felipe?" This quote deserves a video of its own one day, but it's important to realize that their jobs are to make money. They operate on stock performance, budgets, and return on investment. When you're driven by these metrics, it's easy to call someone greedy and move on, but unfortunately, increasing games from $60 to $70 wasn't entirely greedy. Let's quickly revisit this chart I made for the $70 games video. Don't worry, this isn't a lecture with an exam at the end. I am not a teacher. The purpose of this chart is to investigate whether the $10 increase was enough to make any meaningful difference. From left to right, I have a game, which year it came out, how much it cost to make, and the number of units sold before entering their margin for profit. Just so we're clear on terminology, the break-even point is how many units a game must sell to make their money back. Additional sales after crossing this number are considered profit. From here, you can clearly see budgets increasing and how difficult it is to reach profitable territory. The other important thing to consider here is that the gaming industry has exploded in popularity over the past 40 years. With game development becoming more complicated and the industry's rapid growth, these budgets actually grow proportionally. You can probably argue that teams are operating inefficiently, but we can't paint broad strokes since each development team has different operating structures. The reason I made this chart was to illustrate how difficult it's become for publishers to make their money back. Crash Bandicoot 1 had to sell 30,000 copies, Halo 2 had to sell 400,000 copies, Destiny 1 had to sell 4.6 million copies, and Grand Theft Auto 6, if it really costs $2 billion to make, will need to sell 22 million copies at $90 to make its money back. To make this conversation more interesting, I added 2 columns measuring the effectiveness of new game prices. If Crash Bandicoot and Halo 2 sold at $60, they would have needed to sell 18% less to reach its break-even point. And if The Last of Us Part 2 and Spider-Man 2 were sold at $60, they'd need to ship an additional 15%, which is about 600,000 more copies to break even. Lastly, GTA 6 would need to sell 22 million units at $90 and 28 million units at $70 to meet their break-even goal. On a surface level, it's easy to conclude that these prices really help the industry. Increasing prices from $60 to $70, $80, and $90 plays a huge role in reducing risk. Reducing risk is important important because, in theory at least, this should help studios retain employees and allow creatives to explore different things with a new baseline cost, but that couldn't be further from the truth. Sure, these prices objectively help the industry recoup costs, but numerous layoffs have occurred, studios have been closed, and the AAA industry is becoming more and more homogenous with remakes, reboots, remasters, and sequels. What I'm trying to get at here is we can't only look at the data. There's nuance, context, industry trends, and other external factors we have to consider. As movie tickets, books, groceries, gas, homes, cars, and other expenses have grown with inflation, video games have been very slow to adopt new prices. Even with all the outrage over the $70 price point, video games have proven to be inelastic products. Elasticity of demand measures the shift in demand when a product's price changes. If your favorite restaurant's burger went from being $10 to $40, you'd probably stop eating there. Think of elastic products like eating out, vacations, and other non-essential goods. Conversely, inelastic products are things like gas, insulin, medications, and goods we need to survive. As much as we complain about gas prices going up and down, we all need gas. Even when video games increased from $60 to $70, sales kept climbing as the industry continued to grow, and I think there's two interesting observations here. We need to understand the difference between the hardcore and casual fans, and I promise I'm not saying this to gatekeep. If you're watching this video, reading articles, voicing your opinions on social media, talking in Discords, commenting on Reddit, and buying more than 3 games a year, you're part of the hardcore community. Never forget that an algorithm is designed to feed you content with the intent of keeping you on a platform. Understand that you're interacting in an echo chamber and that most people do what they want. You and your friends may complain about the prices of games, but the gaming industry's revenue continues to grow year over year despite this. Yet, we also can't assume everyone is going to be okay with $80 to $90 games. As discussed earlier, everything outside of video games have grown in price over the years. Nevertheless, video game prices are quite unique. From 2005 to 2019, video games were priced at $60, but they jumped to $70 in 2020 and between $80 and $90 in 2025. Unlike budgets, which gradually increased over time, prices for games have leapfrogged. $60 to $90 is a 40% jump in 6 years. To put this in perspective, as of writing this video, the average cost of gas per gallon in the US is around $3.10. This would be like gas rising to $4.34 per gallon over 6 years, which is crazy. However, if this jump happened over 10 to 20 years, people probably wouldn't complain as much. This would be an easier pill to swallow if wages grew with productivity, but we live in reality. Combine stagnant wages with inflation reducing our spending power, and it's very clear why people are frustrated. Nevertheless, America isn't the center of the world. Something I rarely hear other content creators discuss is other currencies, regional pricing, and how these prices impact the rest of the world. The Switch 2 in the UK will cost £395.99, which is around $513 US, and will cost 629 Canadian, which is $230 more than the original Switch. It's easy to convert these prices to USD and say, oh my god, like that's not that bad, but you need to remember spending power and cost of living is quite different around the world. In Tokyo, the most expensive part of Japan, monthly rent for a studio apartment is 71,583 yen, which is 652 USD. By comparison, a studio in New York City, one of the most expensive places to live in America, is $4,153. Simply converting prices into your native currency and calling it a day doesn't tell the entire story. Dan, a longtime friend of the channel, lives in Brazil and was kind enough to share prices of games over there. Assassin's Creed Shadow retails for 350 Brazilian reals, which converts to $60. So you're probably thinking to yourself, okay, well, that's pretty reasonable, right? Games in America are $70. That's not a big deal. However, what you need to remember is the average price of rent in Brazil is 1,973 Brazilian reals. One video game is almost 18% of your rent. To put this into context, the average price of rent in the US is around $2,100 a month, and 18% of $2,100 is $378. Can you imagine the backlash the industry would face with these prices over here? Can you imagine waking up in America and you just saw games going for $378? It'd be terrible. This is why regional pricing is so important. It's not just us, it's everybody else is hurt. This is relevant to the discussion because games that are already expensive in other regions will continue to disproportionately grow. Failing to price things properly and using USD as the benchmark of conversion erodes sales, encourages piracy, and is detrimental to the entire industry. In 2011, Gabe Newell was the speaker at the Washington Technology Industry Association's Tech NW conference. When asked about piracy, he replied, "The easiest way to stop piracy is not by putting anti-piracy technology to work, it's by giving those people a service that's better than what they're receiving from the pirates. Adjusting prices to match each region's economic situation will go a far way in helping companies instead of relying on the predatory pricing rationale of, let's just convert it from USD, bro." So, now's the part of the video where you're probably wondering where I'm at with these prices. Honestly, the situation is a symptom of a larger issue. On one hand, I understand the frustration. Everything is becoming more expensive and so is our entertainment. On the flip side, development costs rise as publishers endeavor to minimize risks while maximizing profit. Combine this with modern inflation, awful regional pricing, stagnant global wages, and our spending power dwindling, and it's pretty obvious why everyone's pissed. Instead of being frustrated at the price of video games, we need to remember these prices are a symptom of modern day economics. Every industry faces these issues, and there's really no way to fix this, but we as consumers are far from powerless. Never forget that businesses study our spending habits, and what we spend our money on speaks louder than words. $70 games, DLCs, battle passes, skins, and other monetization practices wouldn't have taken off if we didn't support them in the first place. While this is a complicated issue and has much more nuance than what we discussed today, we hold all the power here. Voting with your wallet is the best thing consumers can do because at the end of the day, they need us a hell of a lot more than we need them. Hey, thanks for making it to the end of the video. I know this video didn't really have an answer like any of my other discussion videos do, but I don't know, like this was kind of a hot topic that came up out of nowhere. I think this whole subject is much more complicated than a lot of people realize. So I just kind of wanted to bring a bunch of like evidence, data, and hopefully articulate kind of where my head's at, because I understand why prices are rising and it makes total sense, but there's just so many more things to consider than prices are just going up. But I don't know, like hopefully this video provided somebody like some educational value or just another perspective on the matter. Before we go, a huge shout out to the domain dwellers for supporting my creative endeavors. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it, everyone. And consider supporting my efforts by becoming a channel member. But what do you guys think? I know that the knee-jerk reaction is this is ridiculous, but seeing how budgets have exploded, but seeing inflation around the world and also seeing the cost of living around the world, I don't know, it's a complicated thing. I don't know if there's a good answer, but we do have power at the end of the day. So just make sure to spend your money wisely, and I will catch you guys in the next one.